Hey, good morning, church family and friends. Pastor Jason checking in on this sunny Tuesday, continuing our discussion on worship that Pastor Angie got us started with at worship on Sunday and in her morning video yesterday. And since Sunday, where I've been the most caught up with is the examination of this idea of worship as a verb rather than worship as a noun. If we consider worship as a noun, we consider worship as a thing, then I think we begin to almost kind of box in or limit worship. We try to define worship by the room it takes place in, by the type of music that's played. We define worship by, how we sit or how we stand or by who's there. We start to define it in terms that really limits and boxes in what worship is supposed to be about. But if we start to consider worship as being more the verb, more that, that act of spiritual connection between other believers, that act of removing the obstacles between us and the divine so that we can have a true encounter with Christ. A real, honest to goodness experience with the triune God. That idea of worship, of doing whatever we can to experience that and making that the idea of our worship. I think there's a lot of good that can come from maybe a redefining from an expanding of our definition of worship to be more than just a thing, more than just a noun, but in worship being that action or those actions that allow us to get closer to God, to experience God's true, real, overwhelming presence. Worship as a verb, worship as all day long, worship through service, worship through singing, worship through reading, worship through prayer. The list goes on and on of the actions that we can take that can become worship for us. And I think that's much more vast than that notion as just worship as a noun that we try to cram into one room, or we try to cram into 1 hour, or we try to cram into just something familiar to our senses. Worship as a noun, worship as a place, that's good. That's where we go to gather. But it's that action of worship that should probably be getting more attention than it often does. So that's where I've been. That's what I've been chewing on. That's what's been rolling around in my head a lot since Sunday. And we would love to hear feedback on that from all of you. If you drop a comment here, Pastor Angie will see it. I will see it. I think that Miss Kelly can even see it too. So when we bring up the word worship, especially if we talk about the practice of worship, the discipline of worship, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? When we say worship, you immediately think of what? We would love to hear that, and not to get into an argument, not to correct. You know what I mean? I think as this week goes on, we'll get more and more about, probably, I know that I will on Thursday, about this idea of all the idolatry that we've set up. And Pastor Angie went there as well, because we've created so many false idols around us now that interfere with our ability to get involved in the action of touching the spiritual plane. And which, if that's the verb of worship, if that's what we're supposed to be doing, how do we kind of clear out some of those obstacles and those idols? For today, though, I just ask you to take some time and consider that question. When we say worship, when we say we're going to be discussing worship, what's the first thing that pops in your mind when you hear the word worship? And again, we're just looking for thoughts, looking for ideas, not looking for anything to correct or shoot down. I would just love to hear from, you know, a nice cross section of folks that when we say worship, what does that bring up to mind for you? Friends, I hope you all have just a wonderful Tuesday today. Thanks for taking the time to check out our video this morning. Yeah, hope you're safe. Hope you are well. Hope you're, you know, maybe able to get out and about a little bit, experience the nice warm weather, but still be safe. Still practice the social distancing that is recommended. You know, still taking care of yourselves as best as you can be. Please just remember how much that you are loved, and just know how much that we can't wait to gather back together again as soon as we can. Have a great day. Be safe, be well. Know how much you are loved. Thanks, guys.